Hi everyone, welcome to One Stop Mathematical Solution. Today we are going to solve CSIR NET Mathematics June 2015 question paper. In this video we have only dealt with the complex analysis part. First we look into the part B solutions. First question 33. Let f be a real valued harmonic function on C. That is, f satisfies the equation dou square f by dou x square plus dou square f by dou y square equal to 0. Define the functions g is equal to dou f by dou x minus I dou f by dou y, and h is equal to dou f by dou x plus I dou f by dou y. Then so we are given a harmonic function f here, and g and h are defined by the partial derivatives of f. Then we have to find which of the following options are correct. So we look into the concept used. If f of z is equal to u plus iv is analytic, then ux equal to vy and uy equal to minus vx. These equations are called the CR equation, that is Cauchy-Riemann equation. If the CR equation is not satisfied, then f is not analytic. If ux, uy, vx, vy exist and are continuous and satisfies the CR equations, then f of z is analytic. So now we'll move on to the question. So they are given g is equal to dou f by dou x minus I dou f by dou y. So the real part of g, that is u, is equal to dou f by dou x, and the imaginary part of g, that is v, is equal to minus dou f by dou y. So now I'll check whether g satisfies the CR equation, that is whether ux equal to vy and uy equal to minus vx. So now consider u equal to dou f by dou x. So I'm partially differentiating with respect to x, that is ux is equal to dou square f by dou x square, and partially differentiating u with respect to y, we are getting uy is equal to dou square f by dou xy. Now consider v is equal to dou f by dou y. So partially differentiating v with respect to y, we are getting vy is equal to minus dou square f by dou y square, and partially differentiating v with respect to x, we are getting vx is equal to minus dou square f by dou yx. So if we look here, we can replace minus dou square f by dou y square equal to dou square f by dou x square, since f is harmonic, so it satisfies this equation. And we know that dou square f by dou xy is equal to dou square f by dou yx by the properties of partial derivatives. So vx can be replaced as minus dou square f by dou xy. So from this we are getting ux is equal to vy and uy is equal to minus vx. So the real and imaginary part of g is satisfying the Cauchy-Riemann equation, and ux, uy, vy, vx exist and are continuous. Therefore g is analytic, that is g is holomorphic. Similarly you can check for h, take the real part, take the imaginary part, check whether they satisfies Cauchy-Riemann equation. When we check that, we are getting ux not equal to vy, so it is not satisfying Cauchy-Riemann equation. Therefore h is not analytic, that is h is not holomorphic. So now we'll check the correct options. So the correct option is second one. Next question, question 34. Integral over mod z plus 1 is equal to 2 z square by 4 minus z square dz equal to. So we have to find the value of this integral. We look into the concept used. Singularities are obtained by equating denominator to 0. Cauchy integral formula states that integral over c f of z by z minus z naught dz is equal to 2 pi I f of z naught if z naught lies inside c or 0 otherwise. So now we'll move on to the question. So I'm taking the given curve as c is equal to mod z plus 1 equal to 2. So first of all, we will find the singularity of this function. So equate the denominator of the function to 0. That is 4 minus z square is equal to 0. So from this we will get z is equal to plus or minus 2. So now we will check which of the points lies inside curve C. So for z is equal to 2, we are getting mod z plus 1 is equal to mod 2 plus 1, that is equal to 3, and it is greater than 2, so it lies outside C. For z is equal to minus 2, we are getting mod z plus 1 is equal to mod minus 2 plus 1, that is equal to mod minus 1, that is equal to 1, which is less than 2. So this point lies inside C. So now what we are going to do is rewrite the function so that the denominator contain only the point which lies inside C. So first of all, what you are doing is rewrite this function as the multiples of the point. So this is equal to integral over C is z square by 2 minus z into 2 plus z dz. Keep the point which lies inside C as the denominator. So this is equal to integral over C is z square by 2 minus z by z plus 2 dz. So using Cauchy integral formula, this values is equal to 2 pi I f of minus 2. Here f of z is equal to z square by 2 minus z. Therefore f of minus 2 is minus 2 whole square divided by 2 plus 2, that is equal to 1. So the value is equal to 2 pi I. So we'll check the correct option. So the correct option is third one. Next question, question 40. Let for each n greater than or equal to 1, Cn be the open disk in R square with center at the point n, 0 and radius equal to n. Then C is equal to union n greater than or equal to 1 CNS. So they are defined as Cn curve here, and C is the union of Cn's. Then we have to check which of the following option describe the graph of C. So we look how to do this question. So Cn is an open disk with center n0 and radius n. Cn is union of Cn, so that is equal to C1 union, C2 union, C3 union, etc. So we'll plot C1, C2, C3 in xy axis. So C1 is an open disk with center 1, 0 and radius 1, so we'll get this curve. And C2 is an open disk with center 2, 0 and radius 2, we'll get this open disk here. And C3 is an open disk with center 3, 0 and radius 3, will get this C3 here. So plotting like this, we'll get curves like this, and C is the union of all these curves, so we'll get this whole thing continuous. So if you see that there is no restriction on y-axis, it is going on like that, but x is always positive. So we'll check the correct option now. So there I have said there is no restriction for y, but in option 1, 2, 3 there is restriction for y. So these option cannot happen. So option 4 is correct. Now we will move on to the part C solutions. First question, question 80. Let f be an entire function. Which of the following are correct? So given a function f which is entire, we have to check which of the options are correct. So we'll look into the concept used. Picard's theorem. If f is a non-constant entire function, then f assumes either whole complex plane or complex plane minus a single point. If f omits more than one point, then f will be a constant entire function. F is bounded if there exists m greater than 0 such that mod f of z is less than or equal to m for all z. Liebowitz theorem states that entire bounded function is always constant. So now we'll check the options one by one. So first option, f is constant if range of f is contained in straight line. So if range of f is contained in a straight line, then f of z omits more than one point. Hence by Picard's theorem, f should be a constant function. So option 1 is correct. Second option, f is constant if f has uncountable second option, if f is constant if f has uncountably many zeros. So let f has uncountably many zeros, that is f of zi is equal to 0 for uncountably many zi's. Then by identity theorem we can say that f is equivalent to the 0 function, that is f is a constant function here. So option 2 is also correct. Now we'll check the third option. F is constant if f is bounded on z belongs to C such that real part of z less than or equal to 0. So let me consider f of z is equal to e power z. This is an entire function. On z belongs to C, real part of z less than or equal to 0, f is bounded because when we take mod f of z, this is equal to e power x, and we know x is less than or equal to 0. So e power x is less than or equal to e power 0, that is equal to 1. So mod f of z is less than or equal to 1. This implies f is bounded. So we are getting f is bounded here, but f is not necessarily a constant because it is e power z. So this option is wrong. Fourth option, f is constant if real part of f is bounded. So let me take f is equal to u plus iv. So real part of f is u. So real part of f here is given bounded. So let me take it as m, the bound of real part. So u is less than or equal to m. Now consider g is equal to e power f. Then g is also an entire function. Now consider mod g, that is equal to mod e power f, that is equal to modulus e power u plus iv. So that is equal to mod e power u into mod e power iv, that is equal to mod e power u, because mod e power iv is always 1, and we know exponential is always positive, so we can neglect the modulus sign. So that is equal to e power u. We have u less than or equal to m, so e power u will be less than or equal to e power m. So e power u less than or equal to e power m. So from this we get mod g is less than or equal to e power m, that is g is bounded. So hence by Lively's theorem, g is constant, that is e power f is equal to c. That is taking log on both sides, we will get f is equal to log c, that is f is also a constant. So this option is also correct. So we will check the correct options. So the correct options are 1, 2 and 4. Next question, question 80. Consider the following subsets of the complex plane. Omega 1 is equal to set of all C in C such that matrix 1C conjugate C1 is non-negative definite or equivalently positive semi-definite. And omega 2 is equal to set of all C in C such that matrix 1CC conjugate C1C conjugate C1 is non-negative definite or equivalently positive definite. Let D conjugate is equal to Z in C such that mod Z less than or equal to 1. Then, so they are defined two sets omega 1 and omega 2. We have to check which of the options define the correct equality for omega 1 and omega 2. So we look into the concept used. Matrix of order n is positive semi-definite if and only if principal minors of all order are greater than or equal to 0. So now we'll move on to the question. So they are given the set omega 1 like this. So this matrix is non-negative definite, that is positive semi-definite. So all the principal minors of order will be greater than or equal to 0. So here it is a 2 by 2 matrix, so it has only principal minors of order 1 and principal minors of order 2. So principal minors of order 1 are the diagonal elements, so 1 comma 1, this is essentially greater than 0, and principal minors of order 2 will be the determinant of this matrix. So determinant 1 C conjugate C 1, so this is equal to 1 minus C conjugate, and we need this to be greater than or equal to 0. So we have 1 minus CC greater than or equal to 0. So this implies CC conjugate is less than or equal to 1. And we know C into C conjugate is equal to mod C square. So this implies mod C square is less than or equal to 1. So taking square root on both sides, we will get mod C less than or equal to 1. That is omega 1 is equal to set of all C in C such that mod C is less than or equal to 1. This is essentially the D conjugate set. So omega 1 is equal to D conjugate. Similarly, we'll check it for omega 2. So omega 2 is this set, and principal minus of all order will be greater than or equal to 0. So this matrix has principal minus of order 1, principal minus of order 2, principal minus of order 3. Principal minus of order 1 are essentially the diagonal elements. Principal minus of order 2 are taken along the diagonal elements. So for this one, remove this first row, first column, and the remaining 2 by 2 matrix determinant. And for the second diagonal element, remove second row, second column, and take the determinant of that column. And for the third diagonal element, remove third column and third row, take the determinant. All the determinants are becoming equal to this determinant. So determinant 1 C conjugate 1 is equal to 1 minus C conjugate. This is the principal minor of order 2, and this should be greater than or equal to 0 because this is positive definite. So this implies C conjugate is less than or equal to 1, and we know C conjugate is mod C square. This implies mod C square is less than or equal to 1. So taking square root on both sides, we'll get this is implies mod C less than or equal to 1. Again, this matrix has principal minus of order 3, which is the determinant of this matrix. So take the determinant. So once we take, we'll get like this. Now we have this to be greater than or equal to 0. That is 1 minus C conjugate minus C into C conjugate minus C conjugate plus C into C conjugate square minus C conjugate greater than or equal to 0. So from this bracket I am taking C conjugate outside. From this bracket also I am taking C conjugate outside. So this implies 1 minus C conjugate minus C conjugate into 1 minus C plus C conjugate minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. Now taking minus C conjugate common from these two terms, we will get 1 minus C conjugate minus C conjugate of 1 minus C minus of C conjugate minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. So simplifying these terms in the bracket, we'll get minus C conjugate into 2 minus C conjugate greater than or equal to 0. Now I am taking 1 to this side. So this implies minus C conjugate minus C conjugate of 2 minus C conjugate greater than or equal to minus 1. Now I am multiplying minus 1 to this inequality. So this implies C conjugate plus C conjugate of 2 minus C conjugate less than or equal to 1. Now I am taking C conjugate common from these two terms. So this implies C conjugate of 1 plus 2 minus C conjugate less than or equal to 1. We already got C conjugate is less than or equal to 1. So this implies 3 minus C plus C conjugate less than or equal to 1. We know real part of Z is equal to Z plus Z conjugate by 2. Therefore, Z plus Z conjugate is twice the real part of Z. So using that, we'll get this is equal to twice the real part of C. If C is x plus iy, then this is equal to 2x. So this implies 3 minus 2x less than or equal to 1. Once we simplify this inequality, we are getting x is greater than or equal to 1. So omega 2 is equal to set of all C equal to x plus iy such that x is greater than 1. That is, it contains complex numbers where the real part of complex number is greater than or equal to 1. So this is not equal to the D conjugate. So now we'll check the correct options. So the correct option is third one. Next question, question 81. Let P be a polynomial in one complex variable. Suppose all zeros of P are in the upper half plane H is equal to set of all Z in C such that imaginary Z greater than 0 then. So they are given a polynomial P here and its 0 lies in the upper half plane. Then we have to check which of the option is true. So we'll look how to do this question. So I'm taking a general polynomial P of Z is equal to Z minus Z0. So here Z0 is a 0 of P. So Z0 should belongs to H. That is, imaginary of Z0 should be greater than 0. That is, Y0 should be greater than 0. We have P dash of Z is equal to derivative of P of Z, that is equal to 1. then P dash of Z by P of Z is equal to 1 by Z minus Z naught. Let me take Z is equal to X plus IY. So this is equal to 1 by X minus X naught plus I into Y minus Y naught. So now we'll multiply and divide by the conjugate of this denominator. So when we simplify that, we'll get this is equal to X minus X naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square plus I into minus of Y minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square. So from this we'll get I into P dash of Z by P of Z is equal to I into this term. So that is equal to I into X minus X naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught divided by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square. So now we'll check the options one by one. So first option is imaginary P dash of Z by P of Z is greater than 0 for Z belongs to R. So Z belongs to R implies Z is real number. So that is Y is equal to 0. So we have from this equation imaginary of P dash of Z by P of Z is this term. So that is equal to minus of Y minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square. For Z belongs to R, we are substituting Y equal to 0 in this equation. So this is equal to minus of minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y naught minus Y naught whole square. Here the sign get cancelled. So this is equal to Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y naught whole square. You already taken Y naught to be positive and the denominator all the terms are positive. So totally this term is positive, that is greater than 0. So this option is correct. Now second option, real part of I P dash of Z by P of Z less than 0. Z belongs to R. We'll check that. Z belongs to R implies Y is equal to 0. Real part of I P dash of Z by P of Z is equal to Y minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square. So that is equal to, substituting Y equal to 0, that is equal to minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y naught square. So we have Y naught to be positive, so minus Y naught will be negative, and the denominator is both positive quantities. Totally we are getting a negative quantity. So this is less than 0. So option 2 is correct. So now we'll check the third option. Imaginary P dash of Z by P of Z is greater than 0 for Z belongs to C with imaginary Z less than 0. So we'll check that. Imaginary Z less than 0 implies Y less than 0. So let me take Y is equal to minus H, where H is a positive quantity. So we got imaginary P dash of Z by P of Z is equal to minus of Y minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus Y minus Y naught whole square. Substituting Y by minus H, we'll get this is equal to minus of minus H minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus minus H minus Y naught whole square. So taking a minus outside, these minus and minus get cancelled. So this is equal to H plus Y naught divided by X minus X naught whole square plus H minus Y naught whole square. H is positive, Y naught is positive, so numerator is positive. These two are square term, this is also positive. So totally this quantity is positive. So imaginary P dash of Z, P of Z is greater than 0 for imaginary Z less than 0. So this option is correct. Now we'll check the fourth option. Imaginary P dash of Z by P of Z is greater than 0 for Z belongs to Z with imaginary Z greater than 0. So we'll check that. Imaginary Z greater than 0 implies Y is greater than 0. So let me replace Y is equal to H, where H is greater than 0. In this imaginary P dash of Z by P of Z. So we'll get like this. So this is equal to minus of H minus Y naught by X minus X naught whole square plus H minus Y naught whole square. So this quantity is greater than 0 if H belongs to 0 comma Y naught and equal to 0 if H is equal to Y naught and less than 0 if H greater than or equal to Y naught. So there is no it is not necessary that this is always greater than 0 with imaginary Z greater than 0. So this option is wrong. So now we'll check the correct options. So the correct options are 1, 2, 3. Next question, question 82. Let f be an analytic function defined on an open unit disk in C, then f is constant if. So they are given an analytic function f, then we have to check in which of the following option f is constant. We're looking at the concept used. Let f be an analytic function in D, where D is an open unit disk. Suppose that sequence Zn tends to Z0, where Z0 belongs to D, is an infinite sequence in D, then f of Zn equal to 0 for every n greater than or equal to 1, if and only if f is equivalently 0 throughout D. Let f be an analytic function in D and D dash be a subdomain of D, then f of z is equal to 0 in D dash if and only if f is equivalently 0 throughout D. So we'll check the options one by one. So first option, f of 1 by n equal to 0 for all n greater than or equal to 1. So consider the sequence 1 by n which is tending to 0 and 0 belongs to D. So using the concept 1, f of 1 by n equal to 0 for every greater than or equal to 1 if and only if f is equivalent to 0 throughout D. So we got f is a constant function here. So the first option is correct. Second option, f of z equal to 0 for all mod z equal to 1 by 2. We have mod z equal to 1 by 2 is a subdomain of D, because mod z equal to 1 by 2 is a subset of D, and also mod z is 1 by 2 is a domain. So totally it is a subdomain of D. Therefore using concept 2, f of z equal to 0 for all z equal to 1 by 2 if and only if f is equivalently 0 in D. That is, f is a constant function in D. So option 2 is also correct. Third option, f of 1 by n square is equal to 0 for all n greater than or equal to 1. So we have 1 by n square is tending to 0 and 0 belongs to D. Therefore using concept 1, f of 1 by n square equal to 0 for every n greater than or equal to 1 if and only if f is equivalently 0 throughout D. That is, f is a constant function in D. So third option is also correct. So obviously fourth option is correct, because for all z belongs to -1, 1, f of z is 0. That is, for all points in unit disk D, f of z is 0. So f is a 0 function, that is, f is a constant function. So fourth option is also correct. So this question has all options as correct answer.